do to give back to children in our community. And also, like I said, even the nursing home and military as we can. But in addition to that, I started a project. It's called Project Beauty, and the acronym is Bringing Environmental Awareness Upon Today's Youth. And I started this last year with my cross country team as a way for them to run with a purpose, not just running as a sport, but running with a purpose of doing something. And we, as a group of 17 kids and two coaches and a manager, we collected 160,000 can tops. And we took them to the Ronald McDonald House Charities in Central Georgia, Macon, Georgia, and we took them so that they could recycle them to use as towards their power bill. They recycle can tops. So not only are they helping the environment, but they're doing that to help pay their power bill, and that helps families stay there for free. And I am someone who was lucky enough to stay at the Ronald McDonald House when my oldest son was born. And there's actually multiple kids on our team whose parents have utilized the Ronald McDonald House as a result of, different things. One for us, my son was not born with a medical issue, but he is adopted. We adopted him from birth. And the Ronald McDonald House not only houses parents with children in the hospital for medical emergencies or issues, but also for adoptive parents. And so that's one fun fact that a lot of people don't realize about the Ronald McDonald House. So that was one of our goals, was to be able to make an impact with families, and children in our area who would may use the Ronald McDonald House. And we'll be doing that again this year. We will take the all the can tops that we collect on our last meet in October. And to me, it's just a way of showing them that we can be good stewards of our community. We can be stellar athletes, but we can also be those who have a kind heart and give back and help our environment as well. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm married and I have two beautiful boys. Judson's in seventh grade and Tucker's in sixth grade.
I love that. Well, thank you so
Mhm.
much for sharing a bit more about yourself, as well as the impact that you're having on your community. I love the fact
Mhm.
that you're taking something that you saw as a passion and then you're instilling it in the next generation with your athletes specifically. So, love to hear that and excited to see what this year's project does after you undertake it in
Yes.
2026. So, just to pivot the conversation into your role as a cross country coach
Mhm.
specifically, I really want to talk about how you've seen how extreme heat and air quality has affected your athletes. You can talk about the athletes that you coach, but you also mentioned that your sons play football. So they are athletes as well who do sports that are outdoors and they're in the extreme weather that we're seeing now. So, can you talk a bit more about how you've adapted and seen the changes in that as a mom and as a coach?
Sure. Well, one of the important things with all athletes, and whether you're a coach or you have kids or it's yourself, when you're getting out there and you're out in the extreme heat, whether you're running, you're playing tennis, you're playing football or baseball, all of those things, you have to kind of slowly introduce yourself back to the heat, especially when you're going into the spring, into the summer. Your body's not used to that heat yet. And if you're getting back into exercise, you've got to really sit there and build it up. Be out there for just a little bit. Don't just go gung ho and think, I'm going to go run 2 miles in 100-degree heat and I haven't ran in 6 years. Like, don't do that. Don't do that to yourself and don't expect that of your kids. You need to be able to work towards that for your body. But what we do, one of the regulations that we have, the Georgia Independent Athletic Association, the Georgia High School Association, all of the school systems they require is a lot of people have heard of heat index. That's just a standard thing we hear, but not everybody's heard about a wet bulb globe temperature, and that is really what we go by when it comes to being able to be outside and actually participate in the sports or participate in the games. And if we have to do a delay and start, and that's because of that wet bulb temperature. That wet bulb temperature is actually shows how easily your body can adapt to the heat and cool itself down. So it's a little bit different than a heat index, but it's very vital. And so that's one of the things. I have an app and it's called Heat Index, and I check that every day. And we make sure that when we're getting ready for practice, that wet bulb is not in the black zone or the red zone, because if it is, we shouldn't be running. You shouldn't be running. So if you are somebody who likes to get outside and exercise or do yard work, you need to have an app like that so that you can check that, because you need to be able to protect yourself. Um, but one of the things about the heat that we're seeing right now, especially right now, we are in a huge heat wave down here. I mean, my car said 108 when I got in it to leave work. And of course it cooled down a little bit because I was in an asphalt parking lot. But when I say it cooled down to like 94, 99. And I think my heat index was saying it was 104. And that is extreme. That's extreme. That's also extreme for your pets too. So keep that in mind about having them outside and having them on asphalt to burn, could burn their feet. And their big fur coats. I have a husky, so like I have to walk him early in the morning and I walk him at night because he's got so much fur. So think about those things. There's all of these factors that play in for everybody. But um having one thing that we try to do, we have practice early in the morning on Saturday mornings, and we have practice at 7 o'clock on Monday nights right now, because the sun's still out at 7 o'clock, but there's more shaded areas, and it's given the heat index and everything a little bit of time to calm down. Um, but one thing I will say with this, in addition to thinking about the safety thresholds with the wet bulb and your heat index, is also, making sure that you're taking the proper precautions of having them hydrated, having, water on hand, having ice packs, having those things, having shade where they can get. Because if they don't have those and they do go into a heat situation, where it's gonna be crucial. It's could cause a lot of issues. So it's vital that we get them where we need to be, and also have them and have the backup needed in case something does happen.
Well, thank you for that information. I didn't know that there were apps that were able
Yeah.
to do those readings. And I guess that's a good way to segue into, you talked about some precautions on going
Hmm.
into practices and as they're competing, but what are some signs that coaches and parents could have about heat illness? So as those symptoms start to come down, they know what they're
Hmm.
looking for.
So that the first thing I was going to say is the symptoms. But first off, is important to, before you send your child to practice, or as a coach, that you make sure that everybody's staying hydrated. I was telling you before the call, my son has a football game tomorrow. They play at 5 o'clock. That is going to be extreme heat. And we're at that point in the day where he's not allowed to drink anything but water between now and then, like water, water, water. Gatorades and electrolytes are good, but the water is the best. You want to have that hydration from the water to have your body fully hydrated for it. But things that you need to look for are, well, first off, let me jump back. Know your runners, know your athletes, know the people that you're around. Like, do they have any illnesses? Are they asthmatic? Are they overweight? Are they somebody who regularly exercises? That's when, going back to like the first practice of the season, we're not going to just jump out there and be like, hey, everybody, run 2 miles. We'll see you in a minute. They're not used to it. You've got to build it up, give them, and also assess and see where they are. Like, this person can run 2 miles, no problem. This person walked 99% of it. They need to do this a little bit at a time. This person's having a hard time breathing. And know your runners, so that then when you do have a situation, you know that it's not normal for them. Um, Probably everybody's been in a situation where they felt faint and their hands get real clammy and like you kind of get cold and stuff. Those are, if you see somebody getting real pale, and or really sweating like more than you normally would, those are signs. If they have muscle cramps or twitches, it would also be if they start getting dizzy or have a bad headache. But if you see somebody start vomiting or getting nauseated or start talking incoherent, like they're not making sense, that is like when you're getting to a heat stroke and it's an emergency situation, and you've got to get them out of that situation immediately. That is why most, well, I'm not gonna say most, all events, when you are hosting events, when you're at a cross country meet or a football game, that you're going to have medical staff there. That's the reason why
Yeah.
they have to have them there, because you're going to need to act fast, and because they could have a stroke, and we don't want to get in that type of situation. So it's basically protecting them to get to, so that we don't get to that situation, but also being aware of what the signs are so that if you do see them, you know to act quickly.
Yeah, I know that sometimes people chalk it up to natural things that happen when you're in physical activities, but knowing how to tell
Hmm.
the difference between something that's an emergent situation versus what's normal, i.e.,
Right.
knowing your athletes and knowing what it can show up as is extremely important, especially when we're talking about youth sports because it shows up
Right.
differently in children.
And youth are ones who might not know their limits as well
Mhm.
as an adult would. Like, I know when I'm running, I just need to stop and walk some. I know. And but they, especially with that competition, they don't want to give up, they're trying to push, and they might push themselves too far. And heat exhaustion, heat stroke, those are the main causes of injuries in sports, because they're trying to push themselves, keep pushing themselves, and they need, their body's telling them to stop and they're not. So we have to, as coaches and as parents, make sure that they know, like, if something feels wrong, if something doesn't feel right, or if your body is changing, something is feeling off, you need to stop and you need to tell someone, because we don't want to have a situation of someone getting hurt as a result.
Absolutely. And just to really push in on that competition aspect, especially when you're talking about youth athletes,
Mhm.
sports is just so much more than competition to them. It's also a confidence builder, right? So
It
sometimes they don't
is.
want to stop to take a breath or stop to really find out what's happening in their bodies because they want to keep going and do the reps. So, with
Mhm.
extreme heat being more and more prevalent, specifically in Georgia and in the South, and poor air quality, it may affect those opportunities for young people.
Mhm.
They want to keep doing the reps, they want to keep doing the drills and ignoring what is going on in their bodies. So, how do parents and coaches still affirm them if they have to take those rests during these practices for their health?
Well, so first off, I'll say I'm thankful we have regulations, because we all know that not everybody would follow that, and they would continue to push adults as well as the kids, unless we had these rules in place to say that they couldn't. But thankfully, we have these rules in place, and that we are, mandated to follow these guidelines. But one thing that, you and I discussed this beforehand, and I'm gonna bring it up again. My son playing football this whole week. They have their first game tomorrow, and they've not been able to practice in their pads or their pants or anything this week at all, because it's too hot, helmets only. So not only does that take away from them from being even more prepared for the game, though we know that the other kids that they're playing are doing the same thing because of the heat, but they can't practice to their full ability. They might be resorted to go inside or shorten practice due to the heat. And with coaching and with the running, it's more than just a competition. It's about building that camaraderie, it's about building that confidence and helping them excel at the sport, and it's about them building the friendships with this team. So, like,
Yeah.
my cross country team is actually fifth grade through eighth grade, and I have several students running that are new to our school, and this is just a great way for them to get to know people. And us practicing during the summer, like, one of our new students, she's in eighth grade. She has become really close friends with another runner, and they met through cross country. So then when school started, they knew, she knew some people. And, like, that's really important, especially if you think about a child starting the first day at a brand new school, especially a smaller school where you can't just kind of be a fly on the wall, to be able to walk in and know somebody and have some friendships that you forged through a team and through that team sport. And so if we're having to delay practice, if we're having to cancel practice or cancel games, not only are they missing that opportunity to practice and excel, but they're missing out on those friendships and that time that they could bond, and forge those friendships with, especially with running. Normally we have them running, with twos, like people that run close together, and times are like you two run together and your goal is to beat each other, like see who can beat each other, to give them that competition. But then at the same time they're talking and running, like and being able to, just to bond. And so if you're having to step back from the practices and things because of the heat or because of the air quality, you're losing out on that as well.
Exactly. And there's so many things that go into, to your point, sports
Mhm.
for kids. It is the camaraderie, it is the competition, it is the friendships. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, with an increase in extreme heat and increase in poor air quality, it doesn't allow them to forge those in the way that they may have even
Mhm.
5 or 10 years ago. And we have to keep in mind all the aspects of the sports, not
Yeah.
just the performance part. So, really wanting
Oh.
to make that connection to extreme heat and climate and how it affects more than just the performance, but it can affect so many things for young athletes. So, when we're talking about the climate connection, I know that many people think of climate change as something happening in the future, but it's changing everyday activities like
Mhm.
practices, like the ability to come at a certain time in the day or a certain time to start the actual competitions. It's shifting it
Mhm.
backwards, or there's been multiple times for different competitions where they've had to pause because of heat and then resume at a
Mhm.
different point. And sometimes in a season you're not able to make up those missed
Right.
opportunities, and it messes with people's rankings, and that becomes a
Mhm.
large deal, especially for these young athletes. So why do you think it's important to connect climate change with children's health? And how can we continue to make those connections visible in ways that resonate with diverse audiences, that resonate with parents, that resonate with the kids themselves?
Yeah. I think it's really important that we merge these together because, you know, climate change can be a confusing topic. And, people, like you said, it's not changing. Oh, the ocean, it's been 1 inch. That's not a big deal. Or I'll say, look at Lake Mead in Nevada. And I've actually done a riverboat on Lake Mead, and I've seen the difference in the water level that's where, where it's staying. And it blew my mind. It blew my mind.
Yeah.
And it actually just made me really sad to see, like, you don't understand it until you're in it and you can actually see it. And I think one of the most important things that we can do is we can educate others, but also find that commonality. Whether it's in your local community saying, don't you want a cheaper power bill? We need to, look at ways to reduce our, wattage. We need to look at a ways to reduce our water intake. We need to look at ways that we can recycle so that we're not producing so much trash and the emissions in the air from the trash trucks. And, it's little things like that that people might, not realize little things can make a big difference. But getting everyone on a common ground through whether it's collecting can tops because we're recycling for the Ronald McDonald House with this team, or whether we're doing a trash pickup so that it doesn't go into our water. It's to me, it's the little things like that. Planting trees so that we have more, clean air that's produced from the trees and also the shade for our runners. It's the things like that that we can do as a community, and we can do as a team. We can do, as an organization to help raise that awareness. But you have to be able to connect with that audience and figure out your connection to them. For me, that connections with my runners and educating them right now when they are, 10, 11, 12 years old so that they're setting.
No, I lost you, Allison.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You're back.
Can you hear me? Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So, and for some reason I can't hear you, and I'm so sorry. But like I said, just get, forging that connection so that we can then go and, as a group change, make that small impact, but that small impact can really make a larger impact down the line if we work together.
Yes, well, thank you so much for that insight. Main things that I'm taking from this is that we all have a part to play and we can all make slight changes in our everyday lives so that we have less impact. And also be mindful of extreme heat and how it's affecting our kids and things of that nature. So, thank you all
Thank
for joining us today. I'm just wrapping up. So thank you all for joining us today, and thank you to everyone who's a part of this conversation who's watching live. Soon you'll see how you can take a quick action by signing our petition, calling for energy bills relief, and following. And be sure to follow Moms Clean Air Force to stay engaged, to see what's happening across the country. So we want to go ahead and put the petition up so that you can help protect youth athletes from extreme heat and dirty air. And that link will appear on the screen soon. So thank you all. And thank you again, Allison. And we'll see you at the next one. Bye, everyone.